There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up. Yes!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Camera Chronicles. This is Max Rego. I'm joined by Alex Jackson, our features editor and men's basketball beat writer. We're going to talk the last two games for Duke. Obviously, it's a thrilling win over Gonzaga in Las Vegas and a tight road loss to Ohio State Tuesday night in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Alex, thanks for hopping on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk today.
Yeah, all right, well, let's get right into it. So we are going to start off talking about, obviously, Gonzaga. I feel like if we didn't start with that, that would kind of be burying the lead a little bit. So obviously, a 84-81 win Friday night, despite Paolo Banchero dealing with cramps in the second half. And obviously Gonzaga, still putting together a really good performance on both ends. I thought Duke was able to come away with a huge win and ultimately move to number one before losing, a ranking that they'll probably lose next week after the loss to Ohio State. So, Alex, what was your biggest takeaway from that win over Gonzaga?
I think my biggest takeaway was just the team play overall, as briefly mentioned. They did most of the second half without Paolo. Even when he was on the court, he wasn't really contributing. And it just gave the opportunity for a lot of the guys who are maybe to start out the season, it felt like the second role kind of guys to Paolo. It gave them the opportunity to step up and really contribute. And they kind of beat the number one team in the nation without their best player. So I was just really happy to see that. And then the free throw shooting overall on the night wasn't great, but when it came down to it, Wendell Moore was on the line a lot, and he came through for the team, which was just great to see out of a guy who has struggled his first 2 years, really finding his consistency, and now this year is hitting his stride.
Yeah, he was really impressive Friday night, getting it done on both ends of the floor. I believe he ended with 20 and 6 and 6, and he just was really fluid. Was able to run their offense and really took over in certain spots when Paolo was out with that injury, with those cramps. And it just shows, when they need a guy, when they need to turn to a guy, he's a guy that they can turn to. And I think he's really proven that he may not be Duke's most talented player. I think that's obviously Paolo, the guy who's going to be a potential number one pick. But I think we've harped on it a lot this year on this podcast that Wendell Moore might be Duke's most important player, just for how he gets it done on both ends and his role as kind of the point forward and running a lot of the offense. And I obviously, also think one of the big things was Mark Williams. I mean, he kind of held his own against Drew Timme. He had 5 blocks. 2 of those he could have even had 7 blocks. There was that one foul call on a block on Timme that was, really could have gone either way. I thought that he kind of got all ball, but calls like that happen. It's could go either way. So 5 blocks, really held his own, always a threat on lobs. There was a lob early in the game from Trevor Keels to Williams that really just showed how Duke was going to drive and find open guys. So I thought he was really, really impressive. And then, I know Paolo had the cramps, but I mean, his 20-point first half was unreal. I mean, those 2 threes that he hit in transition, semi-transition, those pull-ups, he was just hot. You could tell he was feeling it. He really, really had a lot of confidence, and he only scored 1 point in the second half, but I still think he won the matchup with Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren was really, really impressive. He's a great passer and a great defender. But I thought Paolo had the upper hand there, and those 3 guys, really showed a lot. Williams, Banchero, and Moore really showed a lot, and their talent is obvious. But stepping up like that in that big spot, in front of that crowd, it was our 2 guys there, Evan Colin and Cam Polo, said it was an NCAA tournament Final Four level crowd. So
what you said about Mark Williams. He was my team MVP before the season started, which I know in hindsight may have been a stupid pick. He probably won't be team MVP, which will be Paolo. But defensively, he has been so excellent all year, and it was really great to see him kind of burst onto the scene in this huge game and be able to hold his own in that paint against two very good guys in Chet Holmgren and Drew Timme. Not only that, and his offensive contributions were great. He was finding his way to the rim easily, drawing fouls, really playing tactfully. Yeah, and then everything you said about Paolo and dealing with the cramps in the second half, but the first half he really just he pulled up for like 2 heat checks. I thought there's no way he's making those shots, and just drain them and suck the life out of Gonzaga, which was great to see. The cramp thing is a bit concerning to me now that we've seen it in 2 big games, and I'm wondering in this 2-week break that Duke has now, kind of what he's going to be doing to make sure that he's ready to go for ACC play. I don't know if you have any more thoughts or if you've heard anything around that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, it has to be a concern. He has said that he's never really dealt with cramps in that, like, to that extent. But I think Holly Rowe mentioned this on the broadcast Tuesday night against Ohio State, that he loses 7 pounds like off sweating during the game, which even like when I hear a guy loses like 2 pounds of sweat during a game, I like that stands out to me. 7 pounds, that's a lot. And so he drinks like a special fluid apparently, which I don't really know all of the science behind that, obviously, but it seems like something that I think that maybe has caught them off guard, like the nutrition staff and Paolo himself. So they'll probably that's something that they'll continue to work with him on, I'm guessing. So yeah, and just I think that there's going to be a lot more big games for this team, a lot more key spots, and whether they, I think they played really well, really well on both ends. I know they gave up 81 points, and Gonzaga shot, I believe, over 50% from the field. But I really thought Duke, Trevor Keels was, didn't have his best game offensively, but he was really good defensively against Nemhard. So, they had a really impressive performance, but they obviously, like, winning that game while Paolo is out for huge stretches of the second half, like they may not be able to, it may not be the most sustainable model, having your best player be on the bench. And we saw that a little bit against Ohio State Tuesday night for some other reasons, mostly for foul trouble. But yeah, and I think just overall, you have to look at this as the best win really of anyone in the country. Any team that's up there on that 1-2 line. I know it's early, but I think we're basically 25% of the way through the college basketball season. But beating number 1 on a neutral court, with everyone on Gonzaga was healthy. Both teams were healthy, and Gonzaga was coming off a game against UCLA where they looked like the ultimate dominating force in the country. And I still think Gonzaga will end up being a 1 seed. They're a great team. They got really good shooters. Their cutting and passing was really impressive against UCLA and against Duke. I thought Duke obviously plays tight man to man, and Gonzaga really did a good job of cutting off that. And so I think it's just a really impressive win, and it shows that this team is has the potential to rise to that occasion in big spots. They did that against Kentucky late when it was a tight game, started the second half, and then they pulled away. And then, against Gonzaga, they were able to, show that they could hang with them from the first 5 minutes. If you watch the first 5 minutes, you could just tell this is going to come down to the last few possessions. And, they kept, every time Gonzaga would make a run, Duke would fight back. Every time Duke would make a run, Gonzaga would fight back. And for Duke to be able to win that game, just a back and forth grudge match was really impressive. So Duke obviously got the number 1 ranking off of that win. There was some talk about maybe Purdue would get it, but this week, but somehow Purdue has never been number 1. I think that will probably change on Monday, because Duke, coming off that win, went to Columbus for the Big Ten AC Challenge. I was there with Jonathan Browning on Tuesday night. Duke they started off slowly. First 5 minutes, Ohio State was up 13-7 early. Duke eventually led by 13 at the half. Was really getting out. They were really getting out in transition very well. I thought Paolo heated up a little bit, ended the first half. Then the second half, Ohio State just went inside. Zed Key was terrific. He really muscled through Williams and Theo John really well. And, Ohio State was able to come away with the win. And Ohio State had two really tight losses earlier in the year to Xavier and Florida. So they could have been an undefeated team going in, but that was a game that they needed, and they showed it. I mean, EJ Liddell didn't have his best game offensively, but he still had 14, and six assists for that matter. So it was an impressive performance by Ohio State. They really slowed the game down and just pounded it inside. And Duke, had showed that, obviously the Gonzaga game showed their peak, but I think Ohio State probably wasn't the best matchup for them. And, they weren't able to handle the defensive pressure as well and handle Ohio State's interior presence. So Alex, what were your thoughts on that game, and how do you compare it to the game we saw against Gonzaga, 4 days before?
Yeah, I think it was a frustrating loss. I mean, just you come off of like your best win possibly of the season, or like could be your best win in a year, and you just play like a game where you blow a 13-point lead and a half, and half your team's in foul trouble. But I think the Gonzaga game is more indicative of what we may see come March Madness, because it was that neutral site game. They were elevating to their competition. This is a young team. Everyone knows that Duke is relatively inexperienced, and for them to go into a neutral or to a hostile Ohio State environment, it's difficult. I mean, I'm not saying that this was like a game they should have handily won, but it was just the second half overall. I think everyone was kind of frustrated watching that, because you see a team with so much talent, and they kind of just it felt like they mentally fell apart in terms of like knowing their basketball game. Like everything they did well against Gonzaga didn't seem to be really present in that second half. They kind of went to the ISO ball a lot more, which isn't really Duke's game. I mean, they can run it. Paolo's a great player, but when Ohio State was stacking up 2-3 guys in the lane, you're not going to hit those shots. And they picked up a lot of really fouls that they shouldn't have. And you would have liked to see the depth come out more, with guys stepping up like they did in the Gonzaga game when Paolo had to sit out, but didn't really happen. And missed free throws. I mean, Ohio State missed a lot of free throws, which kept Duke in the game, but just like down the line, missing shots that they have been hitting all year. It happens. This is a good learning moment for Duke, and I think that they have a real chance to run the table in the ACC. I know we said before the Ohio State game that they have a real chance to go undefeated the whole season, which was a little bit too optimistic, obviously. But the ACC really hasn't been great this year, and with this game under their belt, I think they are going to be more comfortable playing like at UNC, at NC State, or wherever, where the environment could be just as brutal and the matchups become even tougher.
Yeah, I mean, I think the road crowd really showed. I mean, Ohio State, that arena was really loud. Value City Arena was really raucous, and the student section, it's like it was a little similar to Duke's student section, where like a lot of the students were behind the basket that Duke was shooting at in the second half, but also there was like part of the student section was kind of behind the scores table. Like if you're looking at the court, kind of on the same side as where the coaches were sitting. So it was really loud. Ohio State really just pounded it inside and just kept chipping away at the lead. It was at one point it was 15 early in the second half. I think Williams had a layup in transition off a really good pass from Keels, and I thought at that point, Duke was just going to keep staving off any Ohio State rallies, but Ohio State just kept pounding it. Cedric Russell had a lot of key shots for them. He was a transfer from Louisiana. He hasn't really played that much, but he hit a huge three, I believe, to cut it to 2 and hit the game clinching free throws to put him up by 5. And in that last possession for Duke, one thing I want to say is I know Duke had a timeout down 3 after Liddell hit that mid-range pull up over Moore. I usually tend to think coaches should take their timeouts there, just to set up a play. Coach K is typically a guy that from what we've seen is he usually lets his players just play and run a quick play on the fly. And they didn't get a wide open look, but they got a quick switch on the Paolo, and he had a smaller Jamari Wheeler on him, so he was able to shoot over him. It wasn't probably the best shot they could have gotten, but it wasn't a horrible shot. So, and it just sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't. But I thought their guards, Duke's guards, I mean, they just need to stay aggressive because it's just not falling right now. I mean, Keels he's obviously very talented and he keeps attacking the basket, and I love his aggressiveness, but he's just not falling for him right now, even against Gonzaga. But he's been really aggressive. He draws a ton of fouls. And Roach, I thought he had a pretty good first half against Ohio State. And I think he needs there are times in the game where, in a game like that on the road, where he really needs to take command and just run the offense and get them going in the half court, get them into their offensive sets a little faster. Because I think Ohio State, was pressuring Duke a lot, and making it tougher to instead of getting in their set with 27 seconds, getting into it at 21 or 19 or something like that. So
one thing about Keels, ever since the Kentucky game, he seems to really have fallen out of the scoring column, which isn't the biggest deal because Duke can get scoring from almost any position. But obviously, you would like to see him start to find his stroke again. Not that he hasn't lost confidence in the shot, because he still takes shots, which is great to see. What Steph Curry said about I'd rather go over 30 than over 10, because that means I stop shooting. And I just think that over time he'll build this more feel for his shot, and the inexperience kind of came through a little bit in this Ohio State game. I think, especially on that last possession or second last possession when they were down 3, they needed a quick bucket, and he pulled up into the half court and kind of stood there with the ball, didn't attack the basket, waited for someone to tell him what to do or to see if we were going to call a timeout. I don't think Duke had one. So I think just these things will come to him. I think by March, by the ACC tournament, by March, he will be ready, and I don't have any concerns about that. I just think that the more games he gets under his belt, the better he'll become, as with any freshman. And it's just a matter of time before he starts being a consistent threat in the offensive column.
Yeah, and he's still really impressive on pick and rolls. He really does a good job of holding the trail defender, and he does a good job of reading the low man. So he definitely needs to stay involved in the offense. Obviously, Coach K joked it wasn't about Keels, but during the press conference Tuesday night, he talked about Paolo and how he struggled to play with foul trouble. He had that one charge call late in the game, and another offensive foul, I believe, late in the first half. But Coach K said with a clear smile, a wry smile, he's like, I'm not going to bench him, So they're just going to stay the course. And one thing I would say is, when you have guys who are struggling from the field and guys in foul trouble, you kind of need something off the bench, obviously, just a quick breather. And I think that's where AJ Griffin and Jalen Blake's come into play. I really like both of those guys. I think those minutes will come down the road. I think Griffin is just getting his feet under him and just getting integrated in the offense, and Blake's just needs more reps and more time to kind of carve out his niche, because he's getting there where he's just getting to the point of where he's just a off the bench scrappy defender and playmaker, but that'll come. And then last thing on Ohio State, I thought it showed down the road. I think Duke, the teams that Duke will struggle against are the teams exactly like Ohio State. In my opinion, the teams that slow it down. Ohio State was outside the top 250 in pace, according to KenPom, going into that game. So they really slowed it down, pounded it inside with Liddell and Zed Key, Malachi Branham hit a couple shots up in the half court off the dribble. So they really slowed it down. I thought Chris Holtman, the Ohio State coach, had a really good game plan, and they stuck to it. So I thought, that's the type of team, a team that'll slow it down, that could really give Duke trouble in the ACC and could give Duke, if a team like if Ohio State is in Duke's bracket, say as like I kind of view them as like a 4 seed or a 5 seed, and Duke say Duke is a 1. If I'm Duke, I would not want that matchup in the Sweet 16 because that would wear them out. And I don't know if Duke would lose twice to a team in a single season just with this talent, but that would wear you out a lot before an Elite Eight game. So I think those are the couple takeaways, and just comparing it to Gonzaga, you have to, I think that's a game in Vegas where Duke showed how well it can run, and it can finish out a game like that. And Ohio State just not being able to finish in that road atmosphere. It's still the up and down nature of a young team. So you get to do some rapid fire, Alex?
Yeah, hit me with what you got.
All right. Well, so we're obviously through 8 games of this season. A lot of teams throughout college basketball are through 8 games. So we're obviously we'll talk a little bit, do some rapid fire, do some just some quick talking points. So, and Duke is obviously off for 2 weeks now, up until the December 14th game against South Carolina State. So through 8 games, who is Duke's best player?
Are you talking best player or MVP?
Best player.
Best player, I think that's pretty obvious. It's Paolo. He's got unmatched talent, and just his mixture of size and skill makes him really unguardable, and he's going to continue to figure out just how he can exploit that. So I'll just give him some time to really find his ground, but I think there's no question he's their best player.
Yeah, I'll go Paolo as well. He's the best draft prospect on this team. He's the most physically gifted. Again, 6'10", 250, can do everything with the ball, and he's averaging, close to a double-double with 18 points a game. He needs to, he's in love with the mid-range shots, and I think those are just easy. Like that's Duke's like go-to. Just give it to him on the elbow and let him get to his spot. And he's, improving, constantly improving as a defender. He started the year as a very good defender, and he's becoming a great defender, in my opinion. So I'd say he's Duke's best player. Another category, you kind of alluded to this when I asked, but who's Duke's most important player? That could be different.
I think their most important player thus far has been Wendell Moore. He's just, not only has he been great as a basketball player, but he's been great as a leader. Really what Duke needs is they're riding with a younger squad as they do most years. They need that veteran presence, especially with a guy who's handling the ball so much. So I think that his ability to be the guy with the ball in his hands late in the game has really been to Duke's benefit all season.
I agree. I think his ability to grab a rebound and get them into their offense really quickly is like very important for this team because they want to play fast. And I mean, his numbers are, someone tweeted that his numbers are actually similar. I'm not saying he's not nearly as good a player, obviously. But they're similar to Grant Hill's senior year numbers, like very similar. And that just shows like in a way he has a similar game, right? He's a point forward who can kind of do it all, but he obviously is not going to be, like, in my opinion, Grant Hill might be the best player to ever play for Duke, but Moore is just so valuable to this team. His leadership. He was the one who answered all the tough questions on Tuesday night after the loss. It was just him and Coach K in the presser. So next one. What is the biggest surprise so far this season? This could be an aspect of the team's play or a specific player.
That's a bit of a tougher question. I think the biggest surprise has been, for me, the absence of AJ Griffin. I think that a lot of people thought heading like a while ago when he committed to the team, and then even like leading up to the season, that he would have a bigger role on the team, and he's really not logging that many minutes. Understandably so. He's been working through this injury and needs the time to like carve out his own role within the team. But I think that I was really expecting to see more of him, and I think we will see more of him. I just don't know when that's going to come. What about you?
That's an interesting one. I definitely think he'll get more minutes as the season goes on, and maybe it might be a little matchup dependent right now. And I think he just needs to get it again, like get his feet under him. But I'm gonna say, I think the way, the way that their rim protection has kind of evolved as the season goes on. I mean, a lot of teams have exploited their perimeter defense by quick back cuts. And that led to Williams being, almost taken off the floor in some of the early games. Campbell comes to mind. But then being able to adjust and keeping Williams, in the game against Gonzaga, and he played for a significant amount against Ohio State. There wasn't a lot of small ball. So, they started to use that small ball earlier in the year, and then they've kind of gotten more conventional in recent games. So just kind of how Coach K has tinkered with the lineup is definitely, stands out to me. And he's kind of tinkering with a lot of things. So just Coach K trying to, throw a bunch of things, on the court there. They have gone to the little trapping press. They did a 2-3 last night for a bit. So just like the constant changes with the rotations and what they're trying to do defensively definitely stands out. So last one, but is there anything you think, what's the biggest thing to you that needs work as the season goes on?
I think that what needs work? I think their consistency needs a bit of work. It would be nice to see guys like repeat performances, be able to consistently hit from the free throw line. I know that they've been shooting well this year, but I feel like in certain moments when they need to hit their free throws, the front ends of one-on-ones and whatnot, they just have not been. And so I mean, I think all of this comes with time, but just like what I mentioned before about Trevor Keels, he came out great and now he's slowed down a bit. I just like to see them all. I really see everyone come together, and I think by the time that we reach the UNC game, ACC tournament, NCAA tournament, it's going to be really exciting to see everyone's really working together at their best. But I think that Coach K is going to need to push them hard, and everyone's going to need to be putting in the extra work for them to reach that point.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I'm going to go with I think their ball movement has been really good in a lot of spots. I think with a young team, it's tough to get everyone integrated in the offense. So I think their spacing and ball movement could always be maybe a little bit better. So I think, and they have some shooters, and part of the reason why maybe they haven't been shooting as well, especially in big games. I mean, they're 12 for 50 in the Kentucky, Gonzaga, Ohio State games. Their three biggest games from three. And part of that is has to be a little bit due to their spacing and not getting maybe the cleanest looks in the world. So just their spacing and their ball movement, that can always, I mean, I think it's pretty good for a young team at this point in the season. It's a lot farther past where it was last year, 8 games in, and even in some respects the year before. But I think just it can always improve, and with this amount of talent, I mean, you have to have, everyone's got to share the ball, and everyone's got to get their share of the scoring load. So that's what I would say. But I think overall offensively, I think this is a fairly well-oiled machine. Coach K has to figure out the ball movement a little bit, but I think they're really deep. Their defense has been really impressive, and their offense, in terms of the talent, it's obviously a well-oiled machine, but they still have to figure out some of the kinks, and this can become, I think, the most efficient offense in the ACC, and one of the better top 10 or so offenses in the country.
Totally agree. I think that it's only a matter of time before they all break out. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to in the second half of the season is what we've seen so far is kind of everyone have like a glimpse of greatness, or kind of them figuring out their game. And I think in the second half of the season, it's all going to come together. Paolo's going to not be dealing with the cramps. He'll be able to play his best all game. Wendell's already been playing his best pretty much for all game. We got Theo Johnny been working in a hook shot every once in a while. Keels can knock down the three. Roach can be a clutch scorer. So they all kind of have had their flashes throughout the beginning of the season. But I think that as we just move closer, it's going to be happening all together every game, and that's going to be unstoppable.
Yeah, totally agree. It's 8 games in, it's always going to be somewhat of a work in progress, but they're getting there. So, we're going to wrap it at that. We obviously will not be covering any games for the next 2 weeks because there won't be any games for the next 2 weeks for men's basketball, but be sure to tune into DukeChronicle.com for all of our, coverage of all sports and also the men's basketball team over the next couple of weeks before Duke takes the court again on the 14th. But and we'll still have some podcasts. We got something coming out pretty soon that we've been working on for a while. So appreciate everyone for tuning in. And Alex, thanks again for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is great.
All right. Thanks for hopping on, everyone. Thanks for listening.